So this afternoon, we are here for briefing from the policy committee or policy coordinating committee responsible for agriculture on behalf of the New Patriotic Party. Those matters that really needs discussions, that needs attention, that the ordinary Ghanaian needs to understand, has to be given much attention to. So on behalf of the chairman of the policy coordinating committee and on behalf of the New Patriotic Party leadership, I humbly invite the chairman or the co-chairman of the Agric policy committee to take us through the press engagement this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and ladies and gentlemen of the press. Good afternoon. The New Patriotic Party has invited you here to place on record our serious concerns regarding the COCOBOD Bill 2026, which was passed by Parliament of Ghana in the last week of July 2026 under certificates of urgency. Let us begin by stating our position plainly so that it is not misinterpreted. The New Patriotic Party does not oppose reform of the cocoa sector. We accept that the Ghana Cocoa Board Act 1984, PNDC Law 81, is a product of a different constitutional era and is overdue for replacement. We support traceability. We support value addition. We support a legally guaranteed floor for the farmers' share of export earnings. Our objection is not to the destination. It is to the manner of travel and to specific provisions which, in their present form, will hurt the very farmers we claim to protect. A good cause has been undone by a bad process. Ladies and gentlemen, no legislation passed by this Parliament in 2026 touches more Ghanaian households than this one. Approximately 800,000 farming households cultivate cocoa across 10 of Ghana's 16 regions. Counting dependents, the sector sustains an estimated 3 million Ghanaians, close to 1 in 10 of the population. Cocoa generates in the order of 2 billion in foreign exchange in a normal season, making it Ghana's second largest export earner after gold. Cocoa revenue have historically financed cocoa roads, scholarships, clinics, and mass spraying across the cocoa belt. Without doubt, therefore, the sector we are legislating today is confronted with some significant challenges. One, national output dropped from a record 1.047 million metric tons in the 2020-21 season to roughly 530,000 tons in 2023-24 as a result of the El Nino and other factors before a partial recovery to around 600,000 metric tons. COCOBOD itself now projects a fall of approximately 16% in the output for the 2026-2027 season, citing adverse weather, cocoa swollen shoot virus disease, and the encroachment of illegal mining. This is the context. A sector under such challenges cannot afford legislation drafted in haste. The cost of getting this bill wrong will not be borne in Accra. It will be borne in Serioso, Offenso, Asimfosu, Goso, Asenkregwa, Nkoko, Enchi, Nyinahini, Mansum, Adubia, and indeed across the 10 cocoa growing regions. Ladies and gentlemen, The bill was laid in Parliament on Tuesday, 28 July 2026 by the Deputy Minister for Finance and passed within the same week under a certificate of urgency pursuant to Article 106(13) of the 1992 Constitution. A bill that repeals PNDC Law 81 in its entirety. A bill that legislates the governance of an entire industry. A bill that creates a new tribunal. A bill that establishes new criminal offenses was disposed of in a matter of days. We do not say that a certificate of urgency is unconstitutional. It is constitutional. What we are saying is that its use must be proportionate to the case for urgency, and that the case advanced here that the 2026-27 pricing window opens in September does not justify for closing consultation on a law of this permanence. The pricing window recurs every year. This law will govern the sector for generation. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the majority has asserted that a consultant toured the country and gathered stakeholder views. If that is so, the record should show. It doesn't. Indeed, no stakeholder engagement report was laid or made available to the Joint Finance, Agriculture, and Constitutional and Legal Committee when it sat to determine the urgency of the bill. Neither the Ghana National Cocoa Farmers Association nor the Ghana Best Cocoa Farmers Association was consulted in the preparation of this bill. The concerns raised by the Licensed Cocoa Buying Association of Ghana, that is LICOBAG, were neither consulted nor incorporated. The Cocoa Hauliers Association, the operators who physically moved the crop from the shed to the port, was not consulted at all. It also bears noting that the bill laid in 2026 is substantially different from the Ghana Cocoa Board Amendment Bill laid in 2025 and reviewed in committee. Provisions were substantially rewritten and expanded. Members were therefore asked to pass at speed a test that no stakeholder had scrutinized in its final form. Ladies and gentlemen, a significant number of clauses in this bill require further consideration if the legitimate fears of farmers, licensed buying companies, hauliers, and the wider public are to be allayed. We highlight 6. Clause 4, that is a restriction on the mandates of COCOBOD. Clause 4A, ladies and gentlemen, is sound. It bars COCOBOD from undertaking any activity, program, or obligation not directly connected to the regulation, development, marketing, quality assurance, traceability, pricing, or export of cocoa. That is precisely the discipline the institution has lacked, and its response directly to years of legitimate public criticism about mandate creep. Clause 4B, however, undoes it. It bars COCOBOD from assuming responsibilities properly belonging to another ministry, department, or agency, unless expressly authorized by an enactment or with the prior approval of the minister, acting in consultation with relevant authorities. That final limb is the loophole, a statutory restriction that can be lifted by ministerial approval is not a restriction. It is a mere formality. Ladies and gentlemen, come with me to clause 57, the cocoa pricing formula. Clause 57.3 says, and I quote, The producer price for a crop season shall not be less than 70% of the gross free on board price realized by the cocoa board for that crop season, unquote. We welcome the principle of a statutory floor, but we must ask the question that every farmer is asking. 70% of what? And who verifies that 70%? Note, first of all, there was a change in the language. The earlier rendition referred to the world market price of cocoa. The enacted text refers to the gross free on board price realized by a cocoa board. These are not the same thing. The world market price is observable on the ICE exchange by anyone with a terminal. The realized gross FOB is an internally computed figure blended across forward contracts, sold at prices fixed months or seasons earlier, and known with certainty only to COCOBOD. Pegging farmers' statutory entitlement to a denominator that only one party can calculate and that no farmer can independently verify is not a guarantee. It is a promise with the arithmetic withheld. Government must therefore state clearly, would the realized gross FOB computation and the contract underlying it be published each season? Would the producer price review committee's working be open to independent audits? Will farmers' representative and civil society have sight of the numbers before the price is announced? Now let us go to clause 59, categories of license. Clause 59.1 provides for licenses across a range of activities. Every activity listed at subclauses A, B, C, and D is already carried out by the private sector. The single exception is the activity at subclause E, and that is the export and internal and external marketing of cocoa, which is at present the exclusive preserve of the Cocoa Marketing Company, a wholly owned subsidiary of COCOBOD. The inclusion of external marketing is a licensing regime carries an unmistakable implication. That is, the government intends in time to open external marketing to private licensees. Government must come clear on this because we do not believe it is in the supreme interest of the nation. Ghana's single greatest structural advantage in the global cocoa market is that we sell as one seller. Centralized external marketing through CMC is what underpins our forward sales program, our price stabilization reserve, our quality premium, and critically, our ability to negotiate jointly with Cote d'Ivoire, as we did in securing the living income differential. Fragment that seller, and we surrender the only leverage a producing country has. This is not a hypothetical concern. Under the Cocoa Sector Strategy 1, an NDC administration pursued a policy of partial liberalization of external marketing that would have permitted qualifying LBCs, including cash flow, to export 30% of their purchases. It took the intervention of the J.A. Kufuor administration in 2001 to halt that policy. We are entitled to ask whether Clause 59 is that same policy returning through licensing door. Now, Clause 81, prohibited activities on protected farms. Clause 81 says, and I quote, a person shall not destroy, uproot, damage, or fell a cocoa tree except for the purpose of rehabilitation approved by COCOBOD, unquote. The policy intention here to stop the conversion of cocoa farms to galamsey pits and estate plots is one we share entirely. The drafting, however, is indiscriminate. As it stands, this provision criminalizes ordinary good husbandry. Anyone who understands how cocoa is actually cultivated will recognize this problem immediately. On a properly managed farm, trees are removed as a matter of routine agronomic practice. Under Clause 81A, as drafted, a farmer cannot remove a cocoa tree by way of thinning. A farmer cannot fell an unproductive moribund tree in course of pruning and replacement. A farmer cannot cut a tree infected with cocoa swollen shoot virus disease. That very action Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana and COCOBOD own protocol require urgent to arrest the spread of the disease unless and until approval has first been obtained from COCOBOD. The clause has further consequences that appears not to have been considered. A farmer who no longer wishes to farm cocoa must apply to COCOBOD and await approval before repurposing his or her own land. A farmer whose land can no longer support cocoa because of shifting rainfall patterns, soil exhaustion, or any other cause must likewise obtain COCOBOD's approval before switching to other crops. These are significant encumbrances on private property rights imposed without compensation and without any stated timelines within which COCOBOD must respond to an application. It is our considered analysis that this provision is unenforceable as drafted and will lend itself to abuse, to arbitrary arrest, to extortion at the farm gates, and to the harassment of an already struggling farming population. We say this against a background in which we are already witnessing the abuse of Section 207 and 208 of the Criminal Offences Act, 1960, Act 29, the imposition of erroneous bail conditions on citizens for exercise of free speech, and the weaponization of the courts against political opponents. We have no confidence that cocoa farmers will be spared. Now let us go to Clause 85, Registration of Farmers and Farms. Clause 85.1 requires every farmer and every farm cultivating cocoa to be registered under the cocoa management system and assigned a unique identification number. Clause 85.2 then prohibits any person from engaging in a commercial production, purchase, or sale of cocoa unless both the person and the farm are so registered. The consequences is severe and we believe unintended. Any farmer not captured on the cocoa management system is placed outside the law and may not lawfully sell the crop he or she has cultivated. Now consider the states of the register. Registration under the cocoa management system began in 2019, that is 7 years ago. As at the last check, some 792,952 farmers had been registered and about 1.2 million hectares mapped, against an estimated 100,000 farming households and roughly 1.27 million hectares under harvest. This is a substantial progress, but it is not complete coverage. And COCOBOD has itself acknowledged continuing difficulties in the field including the absence of internet connectivity in some communities. The critical point is this: farmers do not register themselves. Registration is the responsibility of COCOBOD. A farmer who has not been rigged by an enumerator has committed no default. Yet, under clause 85(2), it is the farmer, not COCOBOD, who bears the legal consequences of that omission. Now, clause 106, local processing threshold. Clause 106(2) says, and I quote, "The regulations shall provide for a minimum local processing threshold, which shall not be less than 50% of the total cocoa beans produced in the country to be achieved within a transitional period," unquote. The NPP has consistently championed domestic value addition, and we do so still. Ghana exports raw beans and imports chocolate. That must change. But an ambition is not a plan, and this clause does not answer the question on which the entire policy turns. The binding constraint on local processing in Ghana is not factory capacity. It is the price at which beans are made available to processors. We already have the factories. They stand idle for want of affordable beans. Under the existing arrangement, local processors face no restriction on the quantity of main crop bean they may purchase. In other words, if you are a local processor and you want to buy cocoa beans, the main crop bean, nothing prevents you from buying any quantity that you want to buy. So the impression out there that cocoa beans are not made available to the local processing companies is not entirely true. Light crop beans are sold to local processors at a discount of some 20%, but main crop sales attract the same FOB price as external sales. So government must come clear and answer directly. At what price will main crop beans be sold to local processors under this threshold? If a discount is to be applied, who absorbs it? Is it COCOBOD's balance sheet, the consolidated fund, or the farmer's 70% floor? How is a discount to local processors to be reconciled with clause 57(3), given that a discounted domestic sale necessarily reduces the realized gross FOB against which the farmer's statutory minimum is calculated? Ladies and gentlemen, a statutory floor price is only as good as the willingness of a government to honor it. And on that question, this administration's record is in a single season speaks for itself. If you remember, in August 2025, when the season opened, the finance minister announced a producer price of 51,660 cedis per ton. That translates to 3,228 cedis, 75 pesos per 64 kilos of bag. This was announced as 70% of a gross FOB of $7,200 per ton. In October 2025, after Cote d'Ivoire sets a price of some 20% above that of Ghana, the Producer Price Review Committee raised the price to 58,000 cedis per ton. Again, that translated into 3,625 per bag. In February, that's February 12, 2026, mid-season, the Producer Price Review Committee reduced the producer price to 41,392 per ton, and that is 2,587 cedis per bag, a reduction of 28.6% imposed on farmers who had already planted, farmers who had already sprayed, farmers who had already hired labor, and farmers who had already harvested on the strength of the announced price. Then in February 2026, farmers picketed at COCOBOD headquarters in Accra and also marched in Sehuyoso. As you remember, arrears owned across the chain exceeded over 10 billion. In June 2026, the price was held at 2,587 for the light crop season, and farmers in several districts reported waiting up to 6 months for payment. You all know what happened in the Oti region. I don't know whether you were following. The farmers in the Oti region demonstrated at Hohoi that they have not been paid for several months. So let us be precise with what happened in February. A farmer in Sehuyoso lost 1,038 cedis on every bag of cocoa. We are talking about income already committed to school fees. We are talking about income already committed to labor hired by the farmer. And we are talking about inputs already bought by the farmer on credit. This was not a forecast that failed. It was a price that had been announced, relied upon, and then withdrawn mid-season. It is against that record that farmers now ask to accept a statutory guarantee of 70% of a figure that only COCOBOD can calculate. Their skepticism is not partisan, it is earned. We therefore say two things to Ghana's cocoa farmers today, and we say them without qualification. One, the new patriotic party, together with industry stakeholders and civil society, will monitor the implementation of Clause 57 closely, season by season, and will demand publication on the workings behind every producer price announcement. Two, the next NPP administration, under Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, will not reduce the producer price of cocoa mid-season once it has been announced. A price announced to the Ghanaian farmer will be price honored to the Ghanaian farmer. I'll take the second one again. The next NPP administration, under Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, will not reduce the producer price of cocoa mid-season once it has been announced. A price announced to the Ghanaian farmer will be a price honored to the Ghanaian farmer. Ladies and gentlemen, given the strategic importance of the cocoa sector to the national economy, the new patriotic party respectfully makes the following demands. One, we urge His Excellency the President to withdraw assent to the Ghana Cocoa Bill 2026 and return same to Parliament for broader stakeholder consultation. We also ask Parliament to remove or substantially narrow the ministerial exception in Clause 4B so that any expansion of COCOBOD's mandate requires an enactment. We also ask Parliament to clarify on the face of the bill that external marketing of cocoa remains vested in the Cocoa Marketing Company, or state expressly the government's intention regarding Clause 59(1)(e). We also ask Parliament to amend Clause 81 to exempt removers carried out in accordance with COCOBOD's published agronomic guidelines and confine the prior approval requirements to conversions of cocoa farms to non-cocoa use. We also asked Parliament to defer the commencement of Clause 85(2) until registration under the cocoa management system is certified by Parliament as substantially complete and provide a free farmer-initiated registration routine. To the stakeholder and civil society, we call on the licensed cocoa buying companies, the Licensed Cocoa Buying Association of Ghana, the Cocoa Farmers Associations, the Cocoa Hauliers Association, the domestic processors, and the civil society organizations working in this space to place their positions formally on the public record and to insist on transparency in the technical workings that determine the farmer's price. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen of the press, Ghana's cocoa industry was not built in a single parliament, and it will not be repaired in a single week. It was built over a century by smallholder families who took the risk of planting a tree that will not bear for 5 years. They are owned better than a law made in haste about their livelihoods in their absence. We say again, the NPP supports sector reform. We support traceability, value addition, and guaranteed floor for the farmer. What we cannot support is a test that criminalizes cocoa husbandry, that criminalizes farmers for COCOBOD's own registration backlog, that leaves the door open to the fragmentation of external marketing, and that ties the farmer's entitlement to a figure no farmer can verify. Return the bill, consult the farmer, fix the clauses, then pass a law the whole industry can stand behind. As it stands, major provisions in the new COCOBOD law will hurt cocoa farmers. Thank you for your attention. Yo, Central for ne adofo ayeshia. Ene ye frame mo na ne tia wo mo ane se COCOBOD bill na yede eba parliament no. Ya pass no ejaso no. The New Patriotic Party no ye wo how akon na mienu bi e wo ho no nti ena ya frame na yamano ene DPP say New Patriotic Party yen time say aban ebeye mrafofra o de bebo cocoa no ho ban na emom ne aye kan say o hyemra ebeboa cocoa obi anim cocoa mfaso dodo a ewo ho ene challenges so ewo mu nti wo hyemra ebe bo cocoa ne ho bra ensa se wo ye ne dwaso ensa se wo ma obia ede na desrede ane ebe ha no na hiasem ene na dwena ewo samra no ode tudwa ne yebobo ho ansa na ya hye sa emra no ebe ye mo nwanwa se emrei yede ba mrahye bedwam na wotwekura ama na ya pass samra no na emrei omo aye hyama omo titiriw pa omo dikan ene akuafo ye frɛ Ghana Cocoa Farmers Association for omo president ose obia amona mane se ye hye samre ya anya consultation bia Cocoa Best Farmers Association for so omo so wokuo omo so president so ye frɛ no ono so se obia amona mane se ye cocoa bill bia omo twi cocoa no ye from Cocoa Hauliers Association so yebusa omo se obia nka ahwe nkyere omo the license buying companies so omo de omo adesrede so eba beto yanim eno so yesre senka omo nhwe na ne ye befata no yemfa nhyemre no mu eno so omo anye na mobekaya Billy ya refer ma finance committee Agric committee and constitutional and legal committee say yan kwahwe say yan pass no jaso ana yakwa na ebisa wo say na anye bia mohia major stakeholders na almost o consultant bi echo around ekohia wo yes so consultant call around dia na mohia wo dia momfa report wa kire say ampaniam pa mohia stakeholders no report bia entumi ama nti yesre say nko mo twentwen so nanka pass it through the normal process no enso ye kan ya omo ampene na wa obenya abotra obehwe bill ne mo no o how bebre ewom na emrenti ensia pe na yeyi a ene ye ne mo eka ho asem nia edikan eye nia brofum wo mo friend say restriction on the mandate of COCOBOD na chere say adwuma potin say COCOBOD o ye no na say we be hwe COCOBOD for bia no mo ye akwan e bia no mo ye niema bia enka wo mo call mandate no ho nti aban say o hyemra na ahye COCOBOD keten say ema wo mo empetri emfree wo mo call mandate no ho call mandate no nko a na wo mo enye ene asio eya de papa wo mo aka say awie ye no na wo mo asan aka say immom minister no ebetumi amaya ye adwuma enye COCOBOD no mandate no ye ka say wo ye saade a na jesa akwasi ko na so no san gina akwantia efise minister bi ba na say bibi wo no no ankasa na enije ho a ne opeso wo ye bia na obeye ndi sa cross no efi say enkomo esakra mu a enka ebeboa etoso mienu ene koko eboa ye de bema akuafo no wo hwe mra na ye hye no mu a omo say koko na ebeton ye COCOBOD beton no obema akuafo no ohamu chichemu aduoson yes we de nka ya asem papa na omo ye bill ne foforo no omo di kan tro say ombema cocoa farmers 70% of the world market price afedie ade kwachin ya no masesa world market price no say da binya world market price biem na mum COCOBOD koton cocoa no a ne omo no benya no no mbema akuafo no emu ohamu chichemu aduoson ande ye ka say we dia anadwoma na asembe ni na wonko a okoton cocoa na oba na osese na unya ya ebe ne atumi ahunu say world market price dia and now for phone kra na ugugula ubehun say world market price no eye sei nti u calculate emu 70% ya enya de bia ebe ye den na mom nia COCOBOD nko a ensa be kanede oba no osese na onya ya yentumi enyi no akyinye ena eno so epa ho a aban so obema COCOBOD for obema private companies and license na omo de aye cocoa no ehun omo de abo ho bra na okohwe niema wakeka wo saa cross no a saa adwuma ni nyina no eye private sector no na eye ne odi be hye mu sesi a private sector no nya eye COCOBOD cocoa marketing company for na eye no eye export and external marketing cocoa a ye de ekwa amanone ne yakwa akoton no na odi abehye se eno no obema private companies no license no matumi export cocoa no matumi market cocoa ne say eh we yan sadia na cocoa industry na wogu no obeka ya tamwana PBC omonko ana ne to cocoa no eno na ya aban nko adia nti ya boaye ema Ghana fo bebre enya adwuma eyeye ye ka say da bi ye mie mu ma obi ameye bia nkrofo firi amana no be yeye no ene PBC agu enti si yanhwe yie na ye de external marketing no so ekohye sebe ahoho nsa ene na chese cocoa industry no ano ena yegu no ebiemu aban sei se wo cocoa fuo na wo pese wutwetwa wo cocoa no mu wo pese cocoa no bi wutu firi mu a wo pese wo ye pruning kra ne nyina no je se okokogye tumi krata efiri aban ho ene ye ka se ye ne enim cocoa fuo no ukowa fuo mu ne se wo pese wutwetwa cocoa mu a eno an se wutwetwa cocoa no ebia aboba ape so na pese oyiyi mu a eno anse oyiyi mu na wo te medo kwaye wote akontomra wote dwabo so na okokofo ebia pese otwetwa mu a eno no je so the application e koma aban na hina na aban no ma wo permission se twetwa okoko no mu a untimi twetwa mu ana eno nti ne yesra aban se saa eno de wonhwe na onyi emfiri ho emayen na afi so aban se obemma local processes no omo yam yekoko no obemma wo ohamu chichemu no aduonum na omo ayam no wo heya na omo de aye enema mpese omo de ye chocolate ne ma ekeka ho eya asem papa na ne aye bisa ne se ya mprempren aye wo mu yi se obi ye local processor na opese otokoko free COCOBOD ho a bibia anchekere no so obetokoko opese oto koko no 90% kura akonya wo ho wutumi to na mmom ne wo mu ne se enam se local processor no ya na epese ye boa wo mu nti no main crop bean no a ye de koye external contract no enye no ne ye de ma ye local processors no ye de light crop beans na ye ketwa na ye mfa nkwa abrochire nkoton no ene ye de ma wo mo eno no ye ton no ye teso broni beka say discount of 20% ene ye de ma wo mo nti ne ye bisa wo hande se ye be ma ye local processors no 50% dia na main crop bean no ene ye teso dia ma wo mo ana na ye teso a sa kai beba ho no ebe ye hwan ka COCOBOD for ka na ana ye nyina wo ha ni ebe cha atua ana na ye di ma akuafo no ene ye bete so bi na ye de a finance sa activity no ana enti ni tietie mu anu ne aye kan ne se president na da Roma ye nyina ye president no emrei se ne ya chechire mu how bebre e wo ho the best president says onyamfa ne sanchase a ke besre ne say on sign famra parliament na parliament sambo bo ho na ba bia ye fi say ye sakra mu a ebeye ye no ya sakra mu na ama obia ho aton emra no se ne o sesi ayi de se ye ka se enwo ho saa ya ade a ebe ha akuafo eyiye pa bedamase.
So please, at this point, we will allow for some questions, Cree and English. You mention your name and the media house you are coming from.
Honorable, good afternoon. That's the social name in Chihuahua. Honorable, he said Parliament passed a bill. And once a COCOBOD Ashasi a stakeholders engagement with some of the farmers and association heads. But think beside say, instead now work as a stakeholders engagement and COSO and some more pass a bill. CCA COCOBOD Ashasi or stakeholders engagement. Honorable, would you say or move to me as some a bill not at the upper parliament?
Eno na ye de adesade to omampanyin nim no. Nse COCOBOD for na omahunu se omoye ntumso. Na sebe panyin se intutu anoma ho san ye de akokire panyin se ya anoma benia. Lo no ya pass ye wi o. Wa pass ye wi. Ye pass no em se ukwada. Ejuada no e na omo frɛ akuafo ne other stakeholders se omo mra ne enchechire omo mra ne mu. Na menua wa we to aso mu. Wa pass mra na wi o. Nti die panti na wo pentem se mra na wo be pass ye. Ka oto obu ase na nka wo hia wo mo e na obia de na dwenkyere kakra baaye ansa na ye pass mra no a. Se nka se bibia. Nti meji se COCOBOD for anye ne ye. Meji di se yeso ye kan omampanyin obetie na sopam na sani amekan ye no so onyamfa ne nsa enhyase a onfamra na jasu ya yensan mo bo ho eni akuafo no licensed buying companies holiers and other stakeholders nyina yenhwe na yemfa yie entu yie. You are satisfied?
No. Thank you, Honorable. You did mention that I'm even in the Kofi with the Daily Guide.
Which station?
Daily Guide.
Daily Guide, okay.
Now you mentioned that when you assume office, your government, that the NPP, would not
announce an FOB price and retract and later reduce the price as announced. But we are very much aware that there are a number of factors in determining the FOB price of cocoa. Not only government policy, but other factors such as international market price and also earnings we make from export. Aren't you going to have yourself again, like the NDC in government, would then come back to reduce the price as it's done in recent time?
Thank you very much. As you may know, cocoa was brought into this country in 1879 by Ategya. You can calculate how many years cocoa has been cultivated in this country. We have never, ever reduced the producer price. Never, ever. Since the cocoa was introduced in this country, we have never, ever reduced the cocoa price. Do you know why? The cocoa is sold upfront. We do forward sales. So you negotiate with your international buyers how much they are prepared to buy the cocoa. You negotiate. And once the negotiation ends, you sign a contract. Once that contract is signed, that price cannot change. Rain or shine. You have negotiated with your international buyers. This cocoa or this ton is going for 7,200. So once that negotiations are complete, contract will be signed. And once the contract is signed, within the season, the price cannot vary. So I was surprised that the finance minister came and announced an achieved FOB price of 7,200. You remember the word that he used, achieved FOB, something that you have achieved already. So I was surprised that in course of the season, they turned around and said because the international price had gone down, they are forced to reduce the producer price. No. After you have achieved. So once you have negotiated with your international buyers and signed the contract, remember, when they assumed office, if you remember, they were saying that the NPP administration entered into contracts. Was it for a number of tons in 2024, and they were unable to deliver those contracts. If that contract is delivered today, it will be delivered at the price at which the contract was signed, even if it takes 100 years. So once the contract is signed, it is signed. The price can no longer vary. So that is why the NPP is committed that once the price is announced within the season, midstream, the price will never be reduced.
My name is I believe and I know that the previous administration embarked on rehabilitation of cocoa farms, where they will pay some amount of per cocoa tree, and then they will also give them some planting suckers and some this thing to plant on the distance. I don't know what has come of that program. I don't know what is government are testing it, because the idea was we have the comment to get rid of all schooling issues and other diseases from the cocoa farm. So there will be just some new varieties to plant. I don't know what has become of it. If you can give or share this on us. And then we made a point that when the year assumes power, what will maybe 2020?
January 2029.
Okay, 2029. What you announce will stay there. You are not going to do whether the website goes up.
I've just answered that question. Yes, but let me answer the first part. You see, the single factor which is threatening the cocoa industry is not the price. The single factor which is now threatening the cocoa industry is cocoa swelling shoot virus disease. The Western North, they used to produce more than 40% of Ghana's cocoa. The Western North alone, that's small region. They used to produce more than 40% of Ghana's crop. Today, there's virtually no cocoa in the Western North because of swollen shoots. The disease is such that it cannot be controlled by an individual. So we control it by what we call block treatment. You map out an area, let's say 10 hectares, 20 hectares. Every tree within that enclave will have to be removed. Once you remove it, you have to treat it with an arboricide and wait for 1 year until every part of that cocoa tree is completely dead. The virus cannot survive in dead tissues. It can only survive in living tissues. So once the cocoa tree, the roots and every part is dead, then you can introduce your cocoa. That is what Nana Addo started. He contracted loan from the African Development Bank, if you remember. And that's why our friends on the other side are making a lot of noise that COCOBOD is indebted by some whatever. When Nana Addo was leaving office, close to 60,000 hectares had been treated. Let's ask the current administration whether they've been able to treat even 1 hectare. Even 1 hectare. They have abandoned that program altogether. If we are not careful, if we do not sustain the control of the cocoa swollen shoot virus, the cocoa industry will collapse. So as far as I'm aware, at the moment, they are not continuing with the program. But the program, as you indicated, COCOBOD was doing it on behalf of the farmer. So we would take over your farm, we would do the cutting out, we would do the planting of plantain suckers, we would plant the cocoa seedlings and maintain it for 2 years. When it starts, bearing fruits, then we hand the farm over to the owner. So that is what the NPP government was doing. But as far as I'm aware, that program has been halted. It's no longer, being carried out. Any more questions? Thank you very much. Okay, my name is Isaac Yaopoku. I had my PhD in 1993, so normally I don't add the doctor. That's a long time ago when many of you were not born. I'm the chairman for the Agric Policy Committee, and my co-chair is Honorable George Odro. He is the former member of parliament for New Edubiasi. And the other members, my senior colleague in parliament, in terms of age, I'm older than him, but in parliament is older. So my senior colleague, he is Yao Frimpong. You know him. He was the deputy minister for agriculture. He's now the chairman for the environment committee of parliament. He's also a member of the Agric committee, the Agric policy committee. And Dr. Sagri. Dr. Sagri is also a member of the committee. The other members, and he was also a deputy minister, the Agric, former deputy minister. They are all former deputy ministers, so all of them. So hopefully in 2029, I'll also be a deputy. And hey, Minister, this one day I'm privileged. I'm honored to introduce to you the former Minister for Information and the former Minister for Works and Housing, and currently the chairman for the Policy Coordination Committee. Honorable MP for Ofuansi. You know him better than I do. for Ofuasi Ayuribi. Ofuasi, yes.
So, thank you.
So thank you very much. God bless you.
So, colleagues, thank you. Like we mentioned, other committees will be engaging you and will be presenting various papers. Later.